Our previous class we talked about loops and how we iterate, we loop an iteration over a sequence. So we're going to be talking about functions and Python scope in this chapter. So what are Python functions? Function in a Python is a reusable block of code designed to perform a specific task. And also function can also help in organizing and structuring a code, making it more readable and also easy to debug. So with my definition, we can actually get a bit of what I meant by the meaning of function. So we said here in our manual that it's a code, it's a block of code that runs when it's being called. Also, when you declare a function, right, and you call it again, it runs. So we define a Python in Python function. We define it by using the using this diff. We write diff, this keyword diff, then followed by a function name and a parenthesis, then a column. So this is how we define or create a function in Python. So we're going to be delving to our VS Code to declare a function and also play around with it on how a function works. So I'm coming to here, I'm going to create a file. I'm going to create a file called functions.py. Creating a file called functions.py. So I'm going to the first declaration or definition or creation of the functions. I have div, so I'm going to say my function in small letter and then pass a parenthesis, colon, then I'll say print hello class. So if I come here and then say Python or py function, trying to run my function, right, I then run it. If though we have saved this guy, right, but we ran this code at the terminal, right, did it display anything? It did not. Let me make it clearer for more clarity at the terminal. So I'm going to take away this guy. So though we defined this, it did not show us anything. That is where function being that it when we actually made a definition about function, that it runs when only when it is called. So if you don't call a function, it's not going to run. So I'm going to now come here and say my func and then pass in my parentheses and then save it. Then if I come here and then run it, are you seeing we're having hello class in our what, in our terminal? So this is how function works. You declare a function and then you call it, you call the function for it to display our output. So we can pass in parameters, right? We can pass in parameters inside function. If we actually went through your JavaScript very well, we actually have when we called about parameters and assignments, right? We pass in parameters and set, and then while running the code, we now assign values to the parameters. So let me say I have here x. I passed in a parameter x, and then and let me say I have here x, right, and then I pass in a parameter and then come here and say hello class. I am hello class. I'll concatenate hello class. I am, then I am x. Hello class, I am x. So I would then come here and pass in a value. I've passed in a parameter, right, to this function. I'll then come here and say I am blessing. blessing. Okay, I'll then say I am X. Let me make it this way. I am X, right? Then plus here, using a concatenation sign. I can actually choose to use my F string like we talked about in other previous classes we had. So I'm using a plus concatenation to concatenate this guy here. So I'm going to save this and run my code to see what we are going to have here, right? So I run this guy. Are you seeing it? Hello class, I am blessing. So this is how we assign parameters and assignments to what, to our functions. That is how we can also have a default, right? We can also have a default assignment being given to our parameter. Let me say I have blessing here, right? I'm going to have blessing here, right? If I say equal to blessing, it's actually going to then I can then run this guy here without calling anything inside it. So I'm giving it a default assignment, like I'm assigning a default I'm giving a value to the parameter, a default value to the parameter. It's still in my terminal here, it's still giving me the same answer, right? It's still giving me the same output. So now I could choose to come here and say call my function again, and then pass in another value and say Jane, right? So when I pass in Jane, I come here and run it. If you check here now, firstly it displayed because I passed in a function, right? On line 4 I passed in an empty, I recalled the function and did not pass anything inside it, and on line 5 I now passed in Jane, so it is now giving me Jane. If I now take away this guy, let's see what it's going to do for us here. I saved it and run my code. Are you seeing? Though we have a default value assigned to a parameter here, Jane being passed in here we override this default parameter, and then it's going to, because I called in a function and I now want to change, like changing this name, so it's going to now override the default value I assigned to this parameter. So this is how we assign values to to a parameter in Python. So this is what Python function is all about. So we can return values in Python too. We can return values, for example, I want to return values. I have div, I have numbers, and then passing my parentheses and then my colon. Then I say return 20 or 40 plus, I want to assign an operation here, right? I can say raised to multiplied by x, right? I have x here, I assigned x here. Then I will then come here and then say I have a parameter here, so I want to return the parameter here, right? So I will then come here and see, just like we had initially, we had a parameter, right? So I want to return, we're actually using the return value syntax to return something. So I'm actually trying to run an operation here, right? So I'm going to now, like we said, we always recall our function. So I'm going to say num. I'll say num, and then I'll assign, because I have a parameter here, so I'll assign a value to my parameter. I'll say 5. So 5 multiplied by 40, let's see what we have. So I'm going to save my code and then come to my terminal and run it. So I'm running this guy here. Oh, I'm running this guy here. So I'm going to print it, because I did not say print. There should be a print, please. There must be a print always. Either I assign, then I'm printing the function, right? So I then pass in this guy here, right? So I'm having 5 multiplied by 40 giving me what? Giving me 200 here. Are we seeing my output? My output is written here as what? As 200. So that's how we use the return value in Python function. So we're talking about, next thing I will be talking about is, we've talked about Python function. We'll be talking about the Python scope. So we have the Python scope. So we said Python scopes, when using variables within a program, it is important to keep variable scope in mind. A variable scope refers to a particular place it is accessible within a code of a given program. This is to say that not all variables are accessible from all parts of the given program. Some variables will be global and some will be local. Global variables exist outside a function and local variables exist within a function. So with this write up, we actually explain what Python scope is all about. It's trying to tell us about variables, right? That there are cases whereby you would declare, just like we declare variables, there are some variables that can be called local variables and there are some variables that can be called global variables. So it's trying to tell us that global variables are always accessible anywhere. So you declare a global variable, you can always access it anywhere. But if you declare a local variable, you don't really access a local variable outside a function. So let us see what I explained what it's all about. Let's go to our VS Code and run some codes. So I'm going to take away this guy. So I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it, let me use the word global so we'll know that it's a global. I'll use global underscore variable. I use variable, right? Equal to, I assigned assigned a variable called blessing, right? My name, blessing, and then I passed in a function and say diff name. I passed in a name function, then passing my parentheses and then a colon. I will then come here and pass in a local variable, then passing another thing, passing my surname. I'll pass in my surname, Ihejirika. Then I would now say I would come here and then say print, sorry, yeah, I'll say print. I'll call my function first, right? I'll then say print print global variable. I want to print this global variable. So I have my function. I called my function first because we always say that we should call our functions. So then if I come here and run this code here, I'm going to my terminal. Let me clear this guy so we can get clarity of what we are explaining. So I come here and run this guy. Are you seeing we're actually getting the global variable, right? We're actually getting the global variable. We're getting it outside the function where the function is being called. I can still come here and say print. I can still come here and still access this global here. I can still come here and say print global variable. Then let me take away this other one here so we'll understand it. I'll save it and then come here and run it. Are we seeing it? We are still getting blessing value assigned to the global variable. This is to tell us that we can access global once a variable is declared before you call a function, it's called a global variable. You can declare it anywhere inside the function and also outside the function when the function is called. But let us check how the local variable works, right? I'm going to comment on this guy. If I come here and say print local variable, right? Local variable, and then I've saved it, I'll come to my terminal and run it. Are you seeing it's printing my surname Ihejirika? It's actually printing my surname Ihejirika. Okay, let us now try printing it outside where the function was called. So I'm going to come here and then call print local variable. If you see self, it's not actually it's not giving me a default name that, oh, this local variable exists. It's not, so it's already throwing an error for me. But let us complete it so I will see what we are talking about. So I have my local variable, so I'm saving it, and if I run this guy here, are you seeing it says name error? It's telling me that local variable is not defined because I cannot print local variables outside a function. It must be within a function. So this is what we are talking about, Python scopes, whereby you can access both global variables and then local variables. So we can actually make in Python also, we can actually make a local variable a global variable. Let me say we have a local variable assigned in a function. We can still make it a global variable. So let me say here now, I'm going to use this example I have here, or let me use another example, right? I'm going to use this guy here. I'm going to use another example. I'll say w equal to 5. I'm assigning a number. I'll then say div num, that is number, passing my parentheses, and then colon. Sorry, colon should be outside. Then I will then say I'm trying to, like I said, I said we can assign global to a local variable. So I'm giving a local variable. I have x, or I could still call it the same thing. I have w as a local variable, but now I'm trying to change it to being a global variable so I can access it anywhere. So then I will then come here and say x, or w equal to, I'm trying to do an assignment, w equal to 10. I'm trying to assign more values to it. So normally for a local variable, right, I can say print here, it's going to work, right? I can say print w, I'll save it, and then come here and pass in my function. I'll say num, I'll say num. Then I'm going to save this guy. Then I'm going to clear this guy so that I'll be able to we'll be able to get the clarity of what we are doing. So I come to my terminal, I run this guy. Are you seeing we are having 15? So can we still run this guy outside this guy? Let's try and see what happens. Print, control, so print w. So I'm going to run this guy here. Are you seeing we've already made w a what? We've already made w a a a global variable by assigning the keyword global. So this is how we can convert local variable to being a global variable so that we can be able to access it anywhere.